Hi. Today I'm going to tell another of Grandma's tales. Well, it's a mixture of several of her tales. What she told me about life for her as a child. She was she had 12 brothers and sisters, so there were 13 in all. One of which was adopted. She was always mentioned the fact that one of them was adopted. In fact, having looked at the records recently, the adopted child was only from a relative. I don't know why, because she never said, but it was an auntie's child or something. I can't remember exactly. Her father was a funeral director and wheelwright. Norba was quite small. We're going back well over 100 years. So doing funerals wouldn't be a full-time occupation, and making coffins and making wheels is a related activity. She described various things. Even when she was still at school, she'd be expected to help when she came home or at weekends. When you've got 13 children to bring up, they have to do something towards earning some money, don't they? And she used to be asked sometimes to help wash the bodies, which didn't seem to bother her at all. In actual fact, one of her more gruesome tales of when they had to exhume her body and she had to take their lunch didn't seem to bother her either. She said how there was a terrible smell coming from the body they were digging up when she took their lunch. But they'd left a pile of horse muck as you approached where they were digging the body up, and she was pointed to rub her face in the horse muck so as to counteract the smell somewhat. And she said that there was several people helping dig the grave, and they all had darkened faces from having been rubbed in horse muck to counteract the smell. But it didn't seem to bother her. It's just one of those interesting things that happens when you're a child. She also detailed that the coffins weren't, generally speaking, like a square profile box. They were often made of what I imagine must have been rather like plywood, or it may have been willow, such that they used to heat the wood and bend it so that there wouldn't be a flat bottom. It would actually be rounded like this and would stand on a stand. Some people preferred this. It was the cheaper option because nails were quite expensive and it avoided nails. There was also some people believe that they would prefer that their loved one was buried in a coffin without nails. It had associations for people which I don't fully understand, but it was that was a common method apparently of making coffins. I don't know how widespread that was. Also, it was for people that had more money. They used to decorate the coffins with cloth on the outside rather than on the inside. It was the look of the coffin for the burial rather than for the comfort of the person inside. She said that burying grave goods was also relatively common. Different items would be put inside, from jewellery to implements connected with their usual job, even to weapons of one kind or another, though that was quite rare. She said about half the people would be buried without anything at all, but most would have something. Some would be buried with their wedding ring on, a lot would not. it was the choice of the people being buried, as indeed to some extent was the orientation of the plot. There were plots available facing east, but also plots facing north-south or thereabouts. She never said to me that there was any particular reason between one and the other, though I imagine that the east-west would definitely, with the head to the west facing east, it's a Christian thing, so I imagine that that would be specifically requested by Christians. I don't know that, I just imagine that would have been the case, but she seemed to think it was some plots were one way, some were the other, and you may have a choice or you may not. You may want to put something in the coffin, you may not. You may want it made in the conventional, what now would be the conventional way, you may not. Each one was individual and each person had a different choice, but the one thing they nearly all had in common was that they had to wash and prepare the body in various ways to make it look as nice as possible. I suppose the other thing that she mentioned at this time was going to school, that it was in the same school that I went to, at the infant school, but they stayed there until they were 12 and then left to go to work. She in fact went into service. I'm not sure at what age she went into service. I don't think it was at age 12. It was a little bit older than that, but I suppose she would have worked for her father in the first place, helping more often. But it seemed to have been quite a good education, considering that they all left at 12. They could all read, write, do maths. Well, certainly arithmetic, that's for sure. And she read books. I remember she lent me a book 10 years after once, which was the written by an ordinary German soldier in the First World War, about the view of a German soldier. She was very, to me as a child, I always thought that it always seemed to be the thing that you were always on your own side for both wars, that everybody really believed that England was in the right, and fortunately we won. But she seemed on a far more even basis than I had at the time. I'd say that she saw it much better to win than to lose, but that it was there was no problem whatsoever with the German people with her at all. It was very much seen in the manner of the famous football match, then, if you like, that the men were fighting the war and dying, and it was just as bad for the Germans as it was for us. In both cases, it was the leaders that decided this was going to happen, rather than a popular will. She also would tell me tales of things that they used to avidly listen to Lord Horvath, who was English, but he was in Germany doing propaganda for the Germans, and how you would have to listen to what he said, and you would have to listen to what the BBC said, and between the two of them, you would be able to work out what had actually happened. This again surprised me. I thought as a child that the BBC really did have a reputation for being the international BBC World Service, the international service that was the most reliable to tell the truth about events. But she didn't see it that way at all. She thought it was simply a propaganda machine for the government, which, as I say, I was quite keen on radio. I used to listen to the when I was a bit older, to the World Service, but it is true I did also listen to the Russian propaganda broadcasts and the Chinese propaganda broadcasts in the same manner, thinking, well, that's what she said and you should get the other point of view. I have to say that I didn't get the impression from either the Russian or the Chinese broadcast that they were in the right, but that was my impression. I did send off QSO reports, and I did get sent the Chinese Red Book, which Chairman Mao's Red Book, which was, it has some interesting sayings and ways to live your life in there, but I never took it as all that serious. My mother apparently was a bit concerned that, you know, we might be raided or something, because I'd received this book from China, but nothing ever happened. And yet later she tells stories of, you know, how I got this book from China as though it was a great achievement. So, well, there you are. At that point, I'll say bye.